Off number 10 now, we have aliens. Wherever there is a mysterious piece of land, someone will say that aliens have been there. Antarctica is obviously one of those places. One of the more recent claims came in April 2017, when conspiracy theorists claimed to have found evidence of an underwater base off the coast of Antarctica. The 500-meter long object was spotted on Smiley Island. This image was posted to the website for UFO sightings hotspot. The first thing people usually say is that it just kind of looks like an iceberg that split away from the mainland. The UFO sightings website disagrees though. They say the object does not fit in with the normal shapes of usual icebergs. They say that the shapes and forms from this iceberg look very different when compared with icebergs, if that makes sense. They believe that it could actually be a secret UFO vessel in disguise. What do you think? Next up at number 9 now, we have the ice wall. Flat earthers. Don't they always have the best theories? A lot of flat earth critics raised a very fair question of what exactly happens when people sail or fly to the end of the earth, and how do we not just, fall off? The Flat Earth Society believes that there is a massive 150-foot ice wall surrounding the coast of Antarctica. Not only is it tall, it's also very thick, several hundreds of meters thick to be precise. Flat earthers often cite the British explorer James Clark Ross. The British expeditions went to Antarctica in the mid-1800s. In his travel notes he wrote of an icy wall, saying it was an obstruction of such character as to leave no doubt in my mind as to our future proceedings, for we might as well sail through the cliffs of Dover as to penetrate such a mass. Although of course many historians and those who have actually read the full extent of his journals will know that he is talking about an ice shelf, the Ross ice shelf that was named after him, although this shelf is just 50 meters high and was 600 kilometers long until it recently broke apart. To end this point about the ice wall, let me read one of my favorite quotes from the Flat Earth Society. Beyond the 150-foot ice wall is anyone's guess. How far the ice extends, how it terminates, and what exists beyond it are questions to which no present human experience can reply, apart from, I guess humans who study science, humans with telescopes, humans who have actually been to space. But yeah, forget about them. Moving on to number 8 now, we have Atlantis. For centuries people have been searching for Atlantis, the lost island that Plato wrote about in the Republic. It was the home of the Atlanteans, a technologically advanced civilization who were said to possess almost mystical qualities beyond the average human group. Some people dismissed it as fiction, but others have become convinced that the island is real and that it was submerged under the water thousands of years ago. There's a theory that Atlantis was not submerged though, and that it actually was frozen in the ice of Antarctica. In April 2018, the YouTube channel Conspiracy Depot shared a Google Earth image which shows a strange area in the Antarctic ice. The image shows a series of lines that, according to the video, have an artificial origin and have recently been exposed due to melting ice in the area. Now they say the object is split into 3 parts that are all about 7 meters long. It almost seems too perfect to be formed naturally. Okay, moving on to number 7 now, we have Nazis. I remember one video I did a while back where I discussed in detail the theory that the Nazi Party survived World War II and are currently living in a base on the dark side of the moon. Yeah, that was an interesting theory, but so is this. A lot of people think that this secret base was actually in Antarctica. They say that scientists in the Third Reich mapped out an area of rivers and caves across Antarctica. Then they discovered a large underground lake. They decided this would be the perfect place for their secret base. They supposedly called it Base 22 or New Berlin. For the conspiracy theorists who believe this, they are now split between the ones who think the base is just lost beneath the ice and the ones who think it is still home to a Nazi community all these years on. Next up at number 6 now, we have the bloop. You guys may have heard me mention this one before. The bloop was a nickname given to a strange sound picked up by hydrophones across the Pacific in 1997. The hydrophones are essentially like giant microphones listening out for sounds. They are positioned over 5,000 kilometers apart from each other, so it's not very often they are all picking up the same sound at the same time. Except this time, a number of them picked up the same loud ultra-low frequency sound across the Pacific. Take a listen. Now to many people that sounds like an animal, some sort of creature that made a noise so loud it was picked up across Earth's biggest ocean. If such a creature did exist, it would be bigger than anything we've ever seen. That's the only way it could make a sound that loud. Well, scientists say this is not true and that the sound was actually caused by ice quakes in the Antarctic. It's the sound of ice breaking up and cracking, and the sound was picked up as the bloop. Some people still aren't buying that though and say that the sound may have come from Antarctica, but it was definitely biological in nature. Moving on to number 5 now, we have the hollow earth. Now you've all heard of the flat earth theory that we talked about earlier, but have you heard of the hollow earth theory? As you can probably guess from the name, it proposes that the planet is entirely hollow, empty on the inside, that we all live on a shell on the surface that is about 500 miles thick, which is actually only a fraction of the way to the center of the earth. So where does Antarctica come into this? Well, in December 2016, a study was published indicating there seems to be a massive anomaly underneath the ice of Antarctica. Some researchers believe it to be the remains of a truly massive asteroid that is more than twice the size of the one that wiped out the dinosaurs. Another theory though is that it could be the portal or entrance to this hollow earth we live on. I also read an article about Russian scientists drilling down through the ice in Antarctica. Hopefully they don't just kind of pierce through to the hollowness. What? Moving on to number 4 now, we have Area 51. It doesn't matter what kind of video I do about conspiracy theories, Area 51 will always seem to crop up in conversation, even in Antarctica. In March 2018, news articles began circulating about Arrival Heights, a secret laboratory located deep in the mountains of Antarctica that is called Area 122. That kind of makes you think of how many secret bases there have been between Area 51 and Area 122. Well, I guess the answer is 71, but yeah. Journalists from New Zealand investigated the lab and found that it was filled with very old technology. It was very strange, like something out of a movie. The computers had floppy disk drives. Some of you guys might be too young to even know what that is. There was also a huge computer called the Dobson spectrometer, which had a periscope sticking up out of the roof. So what is this whole place all for then? Well, they say it's to study the hole in the ozone layer above the continent. The old equipment is so sensitive that even breathing or speaking too loudly is said to damage it. Some people say that the base is hiding more secrets and that Area 122 could be the new Area 51. Moving on to number 3 now, we have the pyramids. In 2013, an article in ScienceRay.com claimed that 3 ancient pyramids had been discovered in the Antarctic by a team of American and European scientists. Relatively little is known about the pyramids, and the team behind their discovery has remained quite silent about the whole thing ever since. One piece of information that emerged was that they were planning an expedition to the pyramids to research them properly and determine if they were natural or man-made. If they're natural, they could simply be the product of erosion or tectonic activity, but if they're man-made, that would open up the suggestion of an ancient civilization. We know of only a handful of civilizations that built pyramids as big as the ones that have been discovered in Antarctica, most notably the Aztecs and the ancient Egyptians. Conspiracy theorists are already jumping on board with the Antarctica pyramids being proof of a lost pyramid building civilization. Next up on number 2 now, we have the Big Melt. As I'm sure you're all aware, Antarctica is covered in a sheet of ice. At some points it's 3 miles thick, and as I'm sure you've seen on the news, the ice caps are melting. When you see those images of glaciers drifting out into the ocean, it's natural to think, what if it all goes? Well, that would obviously be a disaster. Some estimates say that if all the ice on the Antarctica sheet was to melt, sea levels would rise by 200 feet. To give you an idea of what this would do, the entire east coast of the US would be underwater, and Florida would pretty much vanish. It would just be entirely underwater. Another scary aspect of all of this is that we don't know how much or how quickly this could happen, or even what it would look like. Climate scientists still have a lot to understand when it comes to this process, but their worst case scenario paints a pretty grim picture. And finally, number 1 now, we have ancient diseases. As we all know, Antarctica is pretty cold. So cold, land is buried under 2 kilometers of ice. Recently in Siberia, in part of the Arctic Circle, nomadic tribes were affected by an outbreak of anthrax that came as a result of permafrost melting and unleashing an ancient strain. A 12-year-old boy died and thousands of reindeer became infected. Obviously, there are many reasons to be worried about the ice caps melting, but it seems that ancient diseases could could be trapped under the ice that modern day humans and animals have no resistance to. As the ice is so thick, we literally cannot know what is under there and what might be lurking. It seems that the permafrost provides the perfect conditions for bacteria to remain alive, dormant for millions of years. Scientists are worried that a Pandora's box of illnesses we don't know how to cure are out there waiting to emerge one day. And we are done.
Number 10. A giant hole. And by giant I mean 2/3 the area of Manhattan and nearly 1,000 feet tall, large enough to have once held 15 billion tons of ice. Beneath the Thwaites Glacier in West Antarctica, there is a gap between the glacier and the bedrock that was discovered only recently by NASA scientists. Much of the void, as they are calling it, is a result of the melting that has occurred over the last few years. According to Eric Rigneau, scientists had suspected that the Thwaites Glacier was not attached to the bedrock beneath it. This void in the ice has helped reveal to researchers how much the ground has shifted between 1992 to 2017 and continues to lead to more discoveries, and who knows what's next. Number 9. Super seals. I'm very glad that I will never know what it's like to survive in the perilous and unforgiving icy tundra that is Antarctica, especially since you need to be a super seal to survive there. Weddell seals had researchers perplexed for a while because they have an uncanny ability of knowing where the gaps in the ice are so they can come up for air. Weddell seals can dive down hundreds of meters while hunting and still find their way up to breathing holes with ease. After years of study, in 2014 the National Science Foundation announced the apparent cause. They may have a sixth sense, and no, it's not that they can see other dead seals. By using the Earth's magnetic field as a natural GPS, these seals are able to find the openings in the ice. Still crazy to me. So not only are they adorable, incredible divers and hunters, they can predict where they need to go in order to survive, which is insane to me. Number 8. Glass sponges. No, they aren't actually made of glass, but the reason they are called that is because of the fact that their skeletons contain silica, which is a component of glass. They act as filters and basically pick up any food that passes by and can live for centuries. They don't only grow in Antarctica, but they seem to be playing a very curious role in the area. Ever since ice shelves began disappearing due to global warming, the appearance of glass sponges has increased. There seems to be a correlation between the two, and scientists are trying to work out what the exact cause is. If they figure it out, they will not only be able to understand the ecology better, but also understand how these creatures store carbon. This could help researchers understand some of the key components behind climate change, so it is definitely a mystery worth solving. Number 7. A perfect rectangle. Now, usually when someone says icebergs, first you think of the Titanic, rest in peace, and 2, you might imagine them looking massive and jagged and the whole metaphor of like there's so much going on beneath. But NASA spotted one that caused a couple furrowed brows. It was perfectly rectangular. This type of iceberg actually has a name, and they are called tabular icebergs. They have steep, nearly vertical sides and a flat top. They spotted what was essentially a massive ice sheet cake while doing a routine aerial survey. NASA tweeted the reason for this anomaly and said, "The iceberg's sharp angles and flat surface indicate that it probably recently calved from the ice shelf. The rectangular ice sheet itself is so massive that if it were to melt, the amount of water could fill every swimming pool in California several times over." Crazy. That just goes to show how much water is actually in Antarctica. Number 6. A lava lake. And no, I didn't say lava cake, but boy do I wish I did. But it is still surprising that somewhere tucked beneath all of that ice there is a pool of lava? What? On Saunders Island there lives one of 8 lava lakes found in the world. Scientists from the University College London and the British Antarctic Survey discovered the lake on the island due to thermal imaging from satellite data. They caught images of the volcano of Mount Michel and noticed a lake of lava sitting within its crater around 700 feet in diameter. The temperature reads at around 1,812 to 2,334 degrees Fahrenheit, which is around 989 or 1,279 degrees Celsius. Which I guess isn't that surprising because it's lava. It's the hottest thing ever. But despite lava bubbling in volcanoes being a very common image associated with volcanoes, there have actually only been 8 ever seen. For the most part, lava dries into rock, which is the case with most of the 1,500 volcanoes on the Earth. So why, especially in such a cold climate, does this one stay molten? Scientists presume it's due to a combination of gases and steam that kind of lock in the heat, but they need to get a closer look, which could take years. Number 5. Green icebergs. actual green, they're jade green. Green icebergs are a weird phenomenon that probably doesn't suit the default image of icebergs in your brain. All the way back to the 18th century, green icebergs have raised many questions and have even had myths built around them. For over 200 years, the mystery of why they happen is finally close to being solved. A research team at the University of Washington believe they have the answer to their unusual hue. Usually icebergs appear white and light blue because of the water, but now Stephen Warren has a new theory, and it relates to the same explanation for blood falls from our last video, which, by the way, if you haven't watched it, go do that now. He believes that iron oxides are responsible for changing the color. Iron oxides are the same compound that create red-brown rust. When they react to oxygen, the iron oxides change the color of the ice. If this study is proven, this could also explain where phytoplankton get their nutrients from, and therefore explain how the whole ecosystem works. So very interesting. Number 4, creepy creatures. Researchers from the British Antarctic Survey were investigating the Filchner Ronne ice shelf and were set on getting a sample of the sediment core. While drilling around 900 meters through the shelf, the drill hit a rock. But not only that, the camera attached to the drill caught a wealth of creatures latched onto the rock. These creatures, who probably haven't seen the light of day for thousands of years, were suddenly there, making scientists' jaws drop to the floor. Animals similar to sponges were attached, but this discovery opened up all new ideas about life on Earth. These creatures are supposed to rely on food to drift past in order to survive, but these ones are stationary and they are 1,500 kilometers upstream from the closest source of photosynthesis. How are they getting their nutrients and where? Number 3, Shackleton's lost ship. Somewhere trapped by mountains of ice is the Endurance. In 1915, Sir Ernest Shackleton along with his crew had to abandon ship when the Endurance slipped beneath the Weddell Sea. The frozen water crushed the hull, so the crew escaped towards South Georgia Island in lifeboats. They traveled 720 nautical miles before they were rescued and left the Endurance where it continues to endure beneath the waves. The idea of recovering the ship has captivated the minds and hearts of seafaring historians and archaeologists for decades. Finally, a UK-led expedition attempted to relieve the ship of its glacial prison in 2019. They made a harrowing attempt but sadly came back with nothing. They sent a submarine to the ocean floor to look for the sunken polar yacht, but sadly the water took that too. They lost contact with it. One of the expedition members stated, "Like Shackleton before us, who described the graveyard of Endurance as the worst portion of the worst sea in the world, our well-laid plans were overcome by the rapidly moving ice and what Shackleton called the evil conditions of the Weddell Sea." Number 2, the anomaly. Somewhere beneath the frozen wasteland of Wilkes Land in Antarctica, there is something that could change our entire understanding of history. The area they are most curious about is 151 miles across and dives 2,700 feet deep. The most common hypothesis for what is under there is a massive asteroid, and not the one I previously mentioned that blew up before it hit last video. This asteroid is twice the size of the one that destroyed the dinosaurs. If it is indeed beneath the ice, it could be the asteroid that caused the Permian-Triassic extinction event which killed 96% of Earth's sea creatures. Of course, other ideas of what the object could be extend to a massive UFO, and even a portal to a mysterious underworld called the Hollow Earth. The reason scientists believe there is something is due to what is called the Wilkes Land gravity anomaly, first discovered in 2006. NASA spotted gravitational changes which indicate an object of immense size. The biggest clue that it is an asteroid is the fact it's sitting in a 300-mile wide crater, so that makes sense. Whether or not you agree is up to you until the day we finally uncover it, but we can all at least agree that something is down there. But what exactly? Who knows? Number 1. Aliens and Atlantis. Antarctica looks like a secret, lying in wait beneath the cold, hard ice and unforgiving mountains. So it's no wonder how year after year dozens of people across the Earth report UFO sightings on Google Maps, and strange snow patterns belonging to ancient beings. Despite its freezing temperatures, this place is a hotspot for conspiracies and mysteries, including those that believe the lost city of Atlantis is somewhere tucked away. Perhaps the massive unknown object beneath the crater is in fact just that, a lost city. After all, as I mentioned in part 1, Antarctica used to be a tropical oasis before it froze over. Who and what got left behind? Though it is highly likely that a civilization would have thrived here, scientists still haven't found any proof that one did, let alone anything that points to Atlantis. Just like the ocean, we have barely scratched the surface on what we know about this vast icy tundra, and we'll probably never really know. And that was our top 10.
Coming in at number 10, we have the legend of the angels. This is an ancient urban legend that has fueled a modern day one. Also, I want to say that Angels in Antarctica is a great name for a band. So basically, in the book of Enoch, it says that angels, but not good ones, bad ones who wanted to breed with humans, were banished and trapped. Shock, drama. A lot of people have interpreted this to be in Antarctica. Now, this old theory keeps on resurfacing. In March 2017, Israeli News Live published an article called "The Fallen Angels Living in Antarctica Are Still Alive," but like, are they? Coming in at number 9, we have "The Ice is Alive." The ice is alive with the sound of singing. Any excuse, I swear. Some people think that Antarctica is a pure beast unto itself. It's a weather demon. The ice is sentient, they believe it, and it can choose when to mess with you. Around 1,000 people have died in Antarctica in the past 200 years as a result of serious disaster, but a further 20 or so explorers have died on the ice. Now, this includes Henry Wolseley, Ernest Shackleton, and Andreas Beck. Expeditionists are prepared for the worst, but sometimes the elements turn. This has led to many suggesting that the ice is alive, something that seems backed up by the continent's mysterious singing ice. Don't believe me? Have a listen. Coming into number 8, we have the spirits of Flight 901. On the 28th of November 1979, Air New Zealand Flight 901 crashed into Mount Erebus on Ross Island in Antarctica. This killed 237 passengers and 20 crew and was honestly a really massive disaster, especially for New Zealand. The flight was a tourist flight in which passengers would get a chance to see Antarctica from the plane, which sounds pretty cool. Unfortunately, the weather turned and the pilot was inexperienced and got disorientated in the whiteout. He crashed into the mountain. Unfortunately, there were no survivors. Now, some of the bodies were stored at the McMurdo station on Ross Island before being flown back to New Zealand. Not all of the bodies were found either. Many people think that the McMurdo station is haunted, and those who have visited have reported a wrong feeling and perhaps a feeling of being watched. Maybe it's the ghostly presence of victims of the plane crash. Some people link the tragedy of the Air New Zealand flight to the no-fly zone, an urban legend of the ice wall. That's coming in at number 7. Literal troll lol 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 lol. Good old flat earthers. Time and time again, they just keep on coming back into these lists. Has anyone seen mine and Charlotte Dobray's interview with flat earther Mad Mike Hughes, by the way? It's on Inform Overload and is seriously worth a watch. It's going to be in the forthcoming Rocket Man movie. I wish that I'd asked him about the ice wall. Honestly, I really wish so. Basically, the Flat Earth Society believes that there is a huge 150-foot ice wall surrounding the coast of Antarctica. What is on the other side of the wall? Well, they haven't been, so they can't tell you. No one has been. Apparently, they say that the world airlines are in cahoots and have signed a pact agreeing never to fly there. In total fairness, the explorer James Clark Ross, the British expeditionist who went to Antarctica in the mid-1800s, did actually write about an icy wall in his travel notes. He said, I quote, "It was an obstruction of such character as to leave no doubt in my mind as to our future proceedings, for we might as well sail through the cliffs of Dover as to penetrate such a mass." Although, of course, many historians and those who have actually read the full extent of his journals will know that he is talking about an ice shelf, the Ross Ice Shelf that was named after him. This shelf is not 150 meters tall, it is just 50 meters and you can fly over it. Yes, the Air New Zealand flight did crash in Antarctica, but plenty of previously scheduled flights have flown over and back prior to the crash. Really, this is just a legend for the conspiracists. Coming into number 6, we have John Kerry and the Antarctica Energy Beam. John Kerry was the 68th United States Secretary of State under Barack Obama. For those that aren't aware, this job is all about foreign policy. Now, in 2016, John Kerry visited Antarctica, and the reason for the trip has been somewhat shrouded in mystery. Good old InfoWars thinks that it has something to do with aliens. Others say that Barack Obama has a secret base there. Alex Jones of InfoWars claimed on Twitter that Kerry had split a hurricane up using an energy beam. Weird. Some people also draw some strange conclusions from the fact that Kerry went from Antarctica to New Zealand and was followed by an earthquake. Coming into number 5, we have the ghost of Blood Falls. Antarctica, the ghosts of Blood Falls. It sounds pretty grim, right? Blood Falls comes up a lot when we talk about Antarctica. It's one of the most visually dramatic places on Earth. Blood Falls is actually an area of the Taylor Glacier, which is named after Australian explorer Griffith Taylor, who discovered the macabre site in 1911. Now the waterfall is a result of the Antarctic ice melting, and it looks like a giant bleeding gash in the snow. No wonder legend has it that the falls are haunted by evil spirits. It certainly is one of the most scary places on Earth simply for its visuals. Although I have to say it isn't actually blood pouring from the glacier, it's an iron oxide tainted flow of salt water. The iron gives the water its bright red colour. Still though, seeing as it's in the snow, it's all red and very dramatic. If you look at it far off, it does look like a giant has been murdered or something, which is probably why people get an eerie feeling in the area. When I say people, few people have actually been there, but you know, a lot of people in blogs online. Coming in at number 4, we have the Nazi tunnels. It seems that Hitler went on a secret mission for oil in Antarctica in 1938, but many people believe that the leader of the Third Reich was constructing secret tunnels in a war bunker. It seems that Germany claimed an area of Antarctica called New Swabia, and the legends range from understandable to simply wild. Some say Hitler survived the war and escaped to South America. Some say he was spotted in Argentina. From there, it was said that he ventured to the very tip of Patagonia and then into his Antarctic bunker to hide away for the rest of his life. Others say he was frozen and hidden there, which is pretty wild. Coming into number 3, we have the ghost of Ernest Shackleton. Sadly, Sir Ernest Henry Shackleton died on his final expedition to Antarctica before he made it to the icy continent. He had previously been during his trans-Antarctic expedition in 1914 to 1917, but sadly the Irish explorer was never to return, except perhaps in the afterlife. It seems that his original hut, which still stands in the Antarctic, is actually haunted by his spirit. Basically, well, so the legend has it anyway. In 1958, explorer Sir Edmund Hillary decided to follow in the steps of the late expeditioner. In his expedition journal, he wrote, "I remember when I first went to Shackleton's hut, and I'm not a person who really sees things very much, but I went inside the door. When I opened the door, it's rather sort of a bare hut inside, but I distinctly saw Shackleton walking towards me and welcoming me, and then he sort of flashed away and he was gone. Spooky." At least he was welcoming though. You gotta love a welcoming ghost. Coming into number 2, we have the lost civilization. Some say that underneath the thick ice of the Antarctic there is a lost civilization. Humans as we know came to be around 200,000 years ago, but what if all the information we have right now isn't actually all of the information? Africa and Antarctica separated 160 million years ago, and some say that long ago an ancient civilization existed alongside the dinosaurs, but are now lost to us. Others say that the timeline of these humans could be much more recent, saying that there is crustal displacement, which meant that large parts of Antarctica were ice-free 12,000 years ago. This could have meant that ancient humans lived there. Now, if we know anything from evolution, it's actually far more likely. Greek philosopher Plato mentioned the city of Atlantis, which was inhabited by half humans, half gods, which actually sounds rather a lot like the descriptions of an angel to me, which, hang on for a hot minute, that sounds pretty familiar. Is the lost city of Atlantis buried under the ice, or, once again, is it angels? Finally, coming in at number 1, we have aliens. Aliens, 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 aliens. For anyone who's ever watched me on Inform Overload, that's my Aliens song, and I like singing it. It's long been speculated that there is something shifty going on down in Old Auntie. That's my new name for Antarctica. Should have used it sooner, really. In September 2018, Google Earth images seem to show mysterious structures becoming visible under the melting ice. The structures appear in a settlement around the size of a small town, which may make people think that actually this is a lost city, but there are tracks and what looks like an airstrip. This has merely added fuel to the aliens in Auntie theory. Is it aliens? A lot of people think so.